What's up, Chris? It's Friday.
Friday, Friday.
Yes.
I know like a lot of folks are maybe like hanging out with family or something, like observing holidays and whatnot. So happy
Yes,
Good
sir.
Friday to those of you that may be celebrating such things today. Um, welcome to On the Rocks, the e-commerce hour, the show where Jay and we talk about e-commerce and e-commerce related things, things to help you make your business work better. Today we're on a tariff kick, but that's like an American thing, not just a show thing. Um, and and you may not be aware, but there used to be some exclusions for de minimis amounts that come inbound, but that's going away, and that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about what that means, particularly in a couple different areas. What kind of the baseline was there, where how we got to where we are today, and all of that kind of stuff, um, and what or whether there's gonna be that's dumb. I'm gonna take that back because there's not a whether there's definitely gonna be an impact from this. It's just a matter of whether or not it stays around, I guess, or if this is another one of those bargaining chips or whatnot. We'll see. Jay, I was interested to learn. I did not know this. 9 out of 10 parcels that are inbound to the United States have glided in duty free, free years for quite some time. But that's going to get shut down May 2nd. May 2nd. So May 2nd is a big day. It's a big day for a lot of different reasons. Um, but it's a particularly big day for the people we're going to talk about today.
Yeah. And one of those people we're going to speak about today is Shein, and another one is Temu. And
Shimu.
and apparently the stat is there's 600,000 packages a day entering the U.S. for them. Is that the number? Is
Yeah,
it
that's what it looks like.
that's
600,000.
yeah,
That's a good amount,
six
right?
hundred
Uh,
thousand at $15 a package. I mean, think about Sheen. You know, your daughter orders 5,000 bathing suits. It's $15. I mean, yeah, where do you get that kind of quantity for that amount of
right.
money? Well, if you run the numbers on that,
Gene?
yeah, you know, 15% of that is like $1 million in tariffs a day.
Yeah, that's a
That's a lot of
lot.
money.
That's a lot of money. Although the common thread joke out there is, let's do the math on that. That's $52 million a year. $52 million a year is not really making much of a dent in the couple $1 trillion deficit. So, is this really doing what we want it to do? Hard to say.
Well,
Um,
well, you said 52. Is it 600,000 a week or a day?
Sure. Okay. 300 million, three hundred and
It's
sixty million. Sorry. That's not nothing, but
it's not
it's,
nothing, but it's it's
yeah. I'd
it's
read somewhere
three
that,
people salary for Doge.
I'd read somewhere, Jay. So to the point of this, right? I'd read somewhere that in the first 15 days of the new tariff, the new Chinese tariff that we talked about on the show
Right.
before,
Yeah.
they generated about a half a billion dollars, so
Yeah.
$500 million in that window alone. So even if it were $1 million a day, it's still
Right.
like relatively insignificant in the scheme of this.
Yeah.
So what is it that we're even talking about? Like, oh yeah, we're talking about big money. That's $300 million. You and I'd love to have it, and so would anybody listening out here. $300 million helps anybody. Even old Elon probably wouldn't turn down a cool 300 million, right? No big deal. What the de minimis item is, right? What this is uh, the way I think about it, Jay, in an audit, when a balance is like kind of negligible, and the record keeping to try to like even manage it or to test it from an audit perspective, like just no one's going to care about that balance because it's relatively unimportant. That's what a de minimis thing is. That number used to be really low, but in 2016 it jumped up to to $800 a transfer. So $800 on an inbound transfer. So if you bought $800 worth of merchandise, say you bought, I don't know, like a nice camera or something, but you bought it from China, you bought it for yourself, and it directly ships to you, right? That $800 camera, you didn't have to pay a duty on it. So a tariff, you didn't have to pay a tariff on it. You just came in because the value of the underlying product was so small that, in theory, the management of this is just not going to do much. In the recent past, the folks at Shemu, the folks at Shein and Temu, have taken advantage of this opportunity, and they've just built a 600 package a day conglomerate that allows them to take advantage of this loophole, so that they don't warehouse products here in the U.S. Right? They don't have to bring in big batches; they can just bring in small ones, and people are willing to wait a little bit to get them because they're so inexpensive. That advantage, right, has been because those two companies are owned by China and owned in China, because of some of that nature and some of the other activity that's going on between the U.S. and China with respect to tariffs and trade wars more broadly. This has been an area of emphasis because for whatever reason that may be. That's in just for perspective, right? Again, $600,000 is from Shemu, right? But 1.4 billion packages came in duty free in 2024, with 90% of those. That's 90% of all packages. So again, this is like most of the inbound trade, and 60% of that 1.4 billion were from China. So this is a focus area. I think there are a lot of similar packages that come from our north and south neighbors as well. Particularly, Jay, I think we may have talked about this a little bit, as Mexico had been a nice little holding place for Chinese goods to come and then cross the border a little bit more cost efficiently. So I'm sure that a good chunk of the rest are either coming from Mexico or China. Releasing this de minimis threshold was actually intended to go into place back in February when the first tariff conversation happened. But Jay, not surprisingly, it was not, maybe wasn't all that well thought through. And people then realized, oh shit, we have to actually do the math on this.
We don't have the systems in place to do this.
That's right.
Exactly.
We didn't have the infrastructure in place to even do collections of this nature because why would you have?
Within an hour of doing this, they had to reverse course and just open it up because they were so overwhelmed, they didn't know which way was up. Right. And to be honest, Jay, it may be May 3rd and this happens again. Yeah. But on April 2nd, so on the good old Liberation Day, liberation of our retirement funds day, the administration announced again that this threshold would be removed effective May 2nd. They did fix, I think, some of the issues related to USPS and the other bonded carriers, those types of things, in order to get this through the door. Jay, if you think about de minimis and how we got here, does that kind of summarize it, or did I miss a critical piece along the way? No, you got it. It's set of value. Anything under that passes through, and it made lots of very happy teens and preteens.
That's right. Right, and we can't be having that. We can't be doing that.
Could you imagine an $800 package coming from Shein? It'd almost be like a trailer load coming. I mean, really.
But right, for real, maybe that's a good amount of product, I'm sure.
Could you imagine the try-on haul? How long that would take?
It's a couple days worth. You have to take a lunch break. That's really funny. No, I can't. But that is a really important point, right? So much of this merchandise is fast fashion. It's stuff that kids or even non-kids are purchasing with the intention of buying something cheap that they can utilize, that when it goes out of style, it's not that big a deal. Um,
I mean, you
or
think
when
about, I mean, what store would you go to buy a very price conscious swimsuit or top? You're going to go to Walmart or Target. This is, it's half, maybe quarter some things the price at
right,
Walmart and Target. So, that's why it's so popular. And you know,
yeah.
yeah, I mean,
Well, and
I
think about
know,
all the
I know you mentioned that they're willing to wait. I know my daughter waited every day for that package to come because when it got here, she tore into that thing, and it's like
I
she
bet.
just tore it and had to try on everything and do a fashion show for all of her friends, and
That's right.
they do the same thing. They're the OOTDs, on TikTok.
Yeah,
So
I understand totally, and there are reasons why that is effective, right? Because if you are Sheen and you can make that product extremely cheaply, you don't have to worry about warehousing it in the U.S. You don't have to worry about uh, you don't have to worry about shipping it around the U.S. so much as because you're going directly to the consumer. Like you do have this margin opportunity where you can take advantage of that missing link in the system, and particularly if you have a boatload 600,000 customers a day where you're sticking it all on one big boat that's getting over here, or on whatever your Sheen plane, whatever, right? Like you if you have that much volume, you can take advantage of the economies of scale that go along with that, and so it totally makes sense, and especially again in fast fashion. Um, the biggest problem there, of course, is that those margins are already like relatively light, and so if you're slapping duties onto these products, like the companies are going to have a difficult time doing anything with this, or the consumer. So your daughter, Jay, my daughter,
hmm
in a few years, right? They're going to have a hard time dealing with this. The proposed duty, I believe, Jay, and you can correct me if I say this wrong, but the proposed duty is a 30% duty per item. That's a lot. But now, thankfully, it does kind of max out at $25 an item or $50 for a package. So if you did buy like a bunch of, is that wrong?
Actually, it's $25 for the package. June
Ah,
1st, it's going to be $50. So
got
they're
it. Got it.
doubling the minimum or the maximum on that.
Got
So
it.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
And so now your five $3 swimsuits that were $15 now got to be five $8 swimsuits that are $40 unless you bought them in the summer, and now they're five $15 swimsuits that are $65, right? So
yeah.
like you can see how that impacts the consumer really really quickly. Um, so some brands they're just not going to have a choice but to raise the price, and that means that again that price is going to go from the whatever a couple dollars a unit to potentially as much as like triple, because of that of trying to cover those duty costs. Jay, when you think about fast fashion and you think about the cost recovery that's going to have to happen, are there other things from a base standpoint, like of why this is going to be such a challenge?
Well, it's going to increase the cost overall, so it's going to cut into
Yeah.
profit margins. It's going to make shifts in cash flow, and so going to have to look at this from a lot of different perspectives moving forward.
Yeah. And again, so that price advantage, right, was built on this duty avoidance. Like
Hmm
that was the strategy, and so there is this this idea that that's a problem associated with this. Like they were taking advantage of it.
Yeah.
Now they also have like this. I don't know exactly how this works. I've never actually bought anything on Sheen, and so maybe I'm not the best person to talk about Sheen. But it's my understanding, and Jay, your daughter might correct me on this, but it's my understanding that they do like micro batches, so they print like 300 or something units of stuff, and then ship that out. So they have a super compressed product cycle because of that. Because they're basically like one batch. We're going to do something new. If you got that batch, you got that batch. If not, you're getting a different batch, and it's going to be something different.
That's a great way to avoid stale inventory. I mean, that's
Right. Right. Yeah. And it
that's
also
good.
like shrinks down the lead time, right? So that
Right.
you don't have to worry about, and this is the same thing we were just talking about, right? You don't have to worry about warehousing it. You don't have to worry about like holding on to it. You don't have to worry about it like getting dusty or something, right? Like you're just making what you made and it's gone because it's already been purchased basically. So um, that that can make a big impact on those lead times. So instead of being
Yeah.
several months like we've talked about, like now it's just a couple of weeks. That can make a big impact. Um, there are there are lots of underlying problems that could potentially go on here too. Like there are concerns for regulators. One of them is like people don't declare the full value. And they say, "Oh yeah, totally not worth that. It's only worth whatever, like a third of the price." So I can see how that can definitely be a potential problem. So that would be, or maybe even worse, like counterfeit issues, right? Where you say that it's a thing, but it's just not that. So because you're trying to save costs, right? So instead of shipping your, I don't know, whatever Louis Vuitton bag or something, they ship something else, a Louis Vuitton. Uh, whatever it might be.
That's funny.
I obviously like. I think that there is always a concern in fast fashion, particularly around the labor situation, right? And if you're starting to compress the margins for some of these companies, that may lead to potential additional issues with respect to that, where you're trying to squeeze even more out of folks that may have limited powers or issues there. Um, Obviously, the U.S. has made a big deal about fentanyl and opioids coming in these types of things too, right? So that's a thing that they'll be watching out for. And then they are looking to bring jobs back to the U.S., well, which again we talked about in different episodes, right? So
So while going through articles for this,
mhm,
I was
yeah,
reading that all the packages that come through are checked. They can see if there's powder or drugs in them.
see, ridiculous. Then
So yeah, and that's the claim that's being made. That
yeah,
they're not coming in the minimis packages, and that it's a farce. But I I don't know what else to say about that because unfortunately that's the truth. I mean that's the case. I mean
yeah,
Customs and Border Protection said we're checking all these packages anyway. So
yeah,
it's not we're not battling fentanyl here. It might be
yeah,
coming through in the container ships and the larger things coming through the ports. That's different, but definitely
yeah.
not coming in through the courier
The
services.
diminishment packages, yeah,
Yeah.
sure. It is interesting, and this is the whole point, right, Jay? Is that the margin math for Sheen, when you start to add these duties on, is going to it's going to be a problem really fast.
Yeah.
The some statistics that were quoted in the research that you did for the show said that the typical Sheen order is about $75 and includes 8 items. Um, Even a 12-point duty, not a 30-point duty, but a 12-point duty wipes out 40% of the SKU level contribution margin. And so again, like we're talking double that plus, like that's a big
Yeah.
potential problem. And it will have the impact of taking like something that you could have like instead of something costing the consumer $50, then it's now costing $60. This is a pretty substantial increase as far as the underlying activity. um Jay, when you think about like the accounting shockwaves that happen from this, right? What kind of stuff would there be to think about?
Making
Yeah, I mean,
sure. making sure we're recording all of those costs, because
Right.
we have to ensure that we're capturing that cost of goods to make sure that we are, you know, making sure that we are double checking our margins and we're pricing things
Yep.
correctly. And
Yeah.
there's a lot of downstream impacts that could be impacted here.
Yeah, and so there are immediate shockwaves to sellers, Jay,
Yeah.
just like you're describing, right? As we've talked about on the show probably every week since February, um, that you're going to have higher landed costs, and that inherently means that you're going to have margin erosion unless you change your pricing, right? And that also means that you're gonna have another issue that's maybe not talked about as much, and that's that you're gonna probably have some kind of delivery delay, because the couriers like used to just be able to like whip your product in, but now they're gonna have to like figure out what the code is supposed to be and make sure that they catch the right duty and do all of this extra work at the border in order to get those products in. So on top of your costs just going up, you're also going to have this delivery issue potentially as well. And so there's going to be a lot of different things to think about if you're using this method for your current business model. Um, Now there may be some supply chain workarounds, Jay. We've talked about this before, but one of the biggest ones, or one of the ones that 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 I think is probably the most likely to happen in the short term, is that you're going to start to see that same thing that we talked about a little bit of some like we're going to whip it around through a different country. The research that you did here, Jay, called it the Vietnam Sprint, as folks are looking to like move production from China, which is often being targeted by some of this stuff, to other countries that maybe aren't as much. Um, and so Shein specifically is incentivizing some of their key suppliers with as much as 30% price discounts to do the manufacturing somewhere else, which seems absurd. But at the same time, like if you have this ability to dodge a whatever the Chinese duty is, right, the 150% or whatnot, like
Yeah.
and and do that without it being like technically wrong, like it's a huge savings for you.
Which was the country that got the? Well, it's not 90. They were tariffing us 90%, which was actually 9%, and they got hit with 45%. Was it Vietnam or was it Taiwan? I was trying to put that together because
I don't know.
you mentioned
Yeah,
Vietnam there. I'm thinking I think
yeah.
it's Taiwan that got that high one. I could be wrong though.
Yeah,
But
I don't know.
yeah,
All I know is that, well, they're all on pause for now, Jay. So,
right. We
so
have another 80 days to see where that's going to
hopefully
land.
figure that out.
So
Right.
hopefully they're all lining up at the White House and signing deals.
Yeah. Right. So some of these things, right? Some of this idea of like resourcing has pros and cons, right? So being able to ship your production to somewhere like Vietnam does have the value of like cutting your Chinese duty risk, but it does also like cause more lead time, right? You're gonna have to like takes longer to get from A to B from over there. You also may have some quality control headaches that you might run into because the rules are slightly different, and that may be an issue that you run into as well. We've already talked about the Mexico nearshoring, right? Uh, Sheen had already been planning a Monterey assembly hub, so I don't know how familiar you are with this idea, and actually I never really thought about it before. But I had a client that brought in things from China in parts, and then at their warehouse facility, they took the parts and slapped them together to become an actual device, right? And that I never really thought about it, but I assume that it's actually probably for explicitly this purpose. If you're bringing in raw materials or just parts of like components of something, it's not this your duty, your tariff is probably a little bit different. And so I assume that that's the same idea that they could explore with Mexico. Um, because USMCA has a duty free if enough regional value content is added. So that could be a solution.
Mm-hmm.
Although if we've learned anything with this administration, Jay, the policies that are in place today might just be ripped away by the time we get to tomorrow. Um, but another challenge. So there's our challenge. Another challenge, especially for companies like Shein, is that that Mexico's has increased their tariffs,
Yeah.
so that they because on those Chinese things. So the loophole ability, right? This ability to be able to onshore or nearshore a product and then whip it across the border a lot more efficiently is starting to dwindle.
Yeah,
Um,
and still at this point, the only thing we can actually predict with any certainty is the unpredictability of the entire thing. Because what is today is not tomorrow, is back again the day after. So, at
yeah,
this
right.
point, we're hanging on for the ride until we actually get something that's been enacted and actually lasts for 3 days.
Yeah,
Because I don't think
yeah.
we've actually made it 3 days with any of these things, except for
Well, the
the
one, yeah,
Chinese
the 150
tariffs.
Chinese tariff,
Yeah,
yeah, right, exactly,
that's
or
the
the
only
in the
thing.
base 10%,
Right.
10% across everything or whatever.
Yeah.
There are other country hopping options too. I think that there may be. I don't know. I haven't read like all the proposed rules here, but there may be countries where those de minimis, like they can still take this de minimis option. So it's countries like South Korea or Singapore, some of our allies that way. You may do that same routing
Yeah.
where things go around, but I think the White House has kind of warned, like, hey, if you do this, we're gonna pull this label from you. So that might be you can maybe only do that for a little while before South Korea gets busted or whatever. um, there are some other like potential things that people can do. Um, I'm not really all that familiar with this idea of pay on sale or like bonded things. Jay, what do you know about bonded warehouses or pay on sale warehouses and how that they might be able to fix or help with some of these issues?
Yeah, a bonded warehouse, it's basically an insured warehouse where they put up a bond to ensure compliance.
Mm.
And basically, you ship the goods there, but they can hold them until the item sells, and then you will then collect uh,
Oh,
the
yeah, okay.
tariff on it.
So,
So it's
so
a
like,
way of stocking in the U.S., but
right,
ensuring that you're still paying the de minimis tariff on it.
right, okay. But that's again another short term solution,
Right.
um, and probably won't like. There's only so much inventory you can ship that quickly, right?
Right.
So that is probably a workaround that may work for now, but may not work forever.
Yeah. I mean,
Um,
ultimately, that's a cash flow savings if you
sure,
look at it that way. You could ship
yeah,
it in and not have to worry about the tariff until the time comes when you've already collected the money. So, you know, that's the advantage
yeah,
there. You're not really
sure.
saving. Uh, you're not saving dollar per dollar, but you're just saving the timing of it.
Right. And so if we think about Jay, like things that companies can be doing, like if you're a business owner, if you're a CFO advisor, if you're something like that, what are the things that you're like starting to tell people to do, right? If you are a company that's taking advantage of some of these de minimis things, I think some of the answers are pretty easy, right? The first one is the obvious one. It's the one that causes the most heartburn, but you're gonna have to raise your prices. You're just gonna have to, unless or
Yeah.
until that the de minimis threshold's brought back. Um, because my expectation is that there will be some pushback to this. Like there will something will occur. Because Jay, again, we did our math there on the current volumes,
Mm-hmm.
but my expectation is that those volumes are going to dip drastically when those prices tick up significantly, and then maybe the math isn't even worth it anymore. So
Yeah.
you're going to have to up your pricing because you're going to have to make consideration for this. That means that there are other strategies that you also need to employ as far as like cash flow math, right? and that's some considerations around your delivery solutions, like
Mm-hmm.
what makes the most sense for those deliveries. There's the item that we just talked about of bonded warehousing, and how purchasing or whatever, maybe developing or creating or manufacturing that inventory right now before we get to May 2nd. Like, you don't have a lot of time to get it here, but that is definitely a consideration that you can make on from a cash flow perspective. And then um, and then I think the the other is just understanding what it is that your customers value about your product in the first place. Because if it is that it's something that's so inexpensive like that, you could just run into all kinds of very, very real problems very quickly. Jay, are there other things that you're thinking about if you were going to be advising somebody that's taking advantage of this de minimis option?
Well, first thing I would do is have them advise their customers of the shipping possibilities of some snafus, or
Oh,
even
timing. Yeah, sure.
the ability that it might take a little bit longer. Just give them an actual. Nice pop there. Uh,
Oh, man. Sorry.
no, it's all good. Give them an actual estimate of what the ETA is on those packages. With these possible changes, and that way set the expectation that they're not waiting. And 3 weeks have passed by, and 4 weeks have passed by, and here it comes. 4 weeks in one day, but because you want to
Yeah.
make sure your customers are happy and they have an expectation. They know it's somewhere between 2 and 3 weeks for the Shein package to hit the door. So
Yeah.
let's go with that. And what else would I do? I would probably be looking at the duties that my products are going to be passed and seeing if they are properly coded. You mentioned the code that's HS code, or harmonized, I think harmonized selection code or something like that.
Mm.
And that it's a 6-digit number that basically puts the item in its class. Now, I know that when I was purchasing containers for a prior business, we were quoted pricing based on what they expected it to be. And then when we got it in and we saw what we were able to review all of the customs paperwork, we can see that it was coded wrong. So we
Mhm.
were able to go back and fix that. But make sure that the products, and most of these are textile, so they're clothing items. It's different. In our case, it
Yeah.
was form filled, sealed. Well, I can't, extruded. I don't know. It was plastic containers.
Sure.
Probably extruded
Whatever those are called.
plastic, but
Yeah.
yeah. So different codes for different items, and you pay the
Right.
tariff based on the item, on the HS code. So
Yeah.
you
Right.
want to make sure it is properly coded for your item. So just do an audit of your shipments and make sure you're getting the right product code with the right items, and you should be good. What else? Be on the lookout for counterfeits. Yeah,
Yeah. I
that's
do
the other
think that
thing.
that is like, I think that's a big like wild card in this process of like um, you do want to make sure that you understand the exposure that could be there, right? Like that can be a big issue, um, and and definitely something that can result in some challenges there.
Yeah.
Um,
So I think the big thing here is that de minimis exemption is only being waived for China at the moment.
oh, is that right?
Yes. So your
Okay.
packages from other locations still will come through.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
as they see the funds coming in, I would expect it to increase. I would
Yeah.
expect the rest of, Southeast Asia and that part of the world to get this de minimis exemption waived as well. And
Yeah.
we have packages coming from the EU and, like you mentioned, Canada and Mexico. Are they next?
Yeah. And so those are the things that you have to think about, right? as you start to make plans for this, especially if you're currently importing stuff from China and you've already kind of explored these other options, like you need to know, number one, what those options are, and number two, like how or whether they're more expensive, how much more expensive, or whether they're more expensive at all. um, and and that gives you this opportunity to still potentially have your ability to defer or come in under those de minimis thresholds, but it might not always stay that way, and
Yeah.
that's exactly the thing that you want to be aware of. So it's really important to stay up to date on what is happening, and to continue to watch and learn as it goes, right? Um, if you One other like opportunity maybe, and this one we've talked about several times here before, but another potential opportunity is in the resale space. So if you have that, again, if your if your packages are already here, and and you want to be able to resell them or sell them again, like there are some options that may be able to help you with that. Um, Jay, if you think about other like maybe winners or losers of this de minimis, like uh, who who's the winner, or who's the loser? America.
Yeah, I think that teens and tweens are the
Yeah.
losers. I'm sitting here thinking. I mean, is this? I know we still have large tariffs on these products, but is this an Amazon play? Do you shift from direct to Amazon? I mean, you have almost like a 20% overhead cost, with Amazon, with fulfillment and other fees, and
Right.
20 to 40% there, and you have to weigh. I mean, you have to go through all the different scenarios and see what works for you and your exact business model. So
Yeah.
and those are some of the things that we could do.
Right. And so I think
take
that
all those numbers and go ahead.
Well, no, I was just going to say, and that's exactly what, like we like to do at the end of every show, right? How do you address this, right? The first one is to do exactly that, like do some analysis on what your what your other options might be,
Right.
and so that may be a duty exposure audit. So how much stuff are you really buying from China versus other parts of the world? How much can you resource to other areas? Or how much can you sell through a different third party? So through fulfillment by Amazon or something like this. Another really important thing to review, especially because if your duties are going up that much, you want to make sure you understand how much your freight is costing. And so you want to revisit the different suppliers and understand whether you can get different pricing or better value from other freight companies in order to make sure that you're being really thoughtful of that. It is probably worth, and especially if you're sourcing a lot of things from China, it's probably worth the evaluation of whether or not a bond and inventory option is an option for you. That's a test that you want to make. Can I even do this? Because if you do have that ability to get it here before it goes into the tariff zone, again, you don't have a lot of time to do it, but you need to do it quickly. But it's worth it. It can be like, it's not, from a cash flow perspective, it's a pretty significant value to you. And then Jay, like you mentioned, one of the most critical things that you can go through here, because in the e-commerce space, so much of what you're doing is based on your brand equity and how people feel about you in the market.
Yeah.
Like you have to communicate to your customers, these are the things that'll be happening to you. These are the things that'll be happening to us, and this is what you should expect out of that. And so that means that you need to have a really good understanding of how or to some degree, like what is going to happen, knowing that there's a potential for the slowdowns at the border, and it's almost certainly going to happen because these things have just been coming in, right? Like there's an inspection, but you don't have to go through the extra paperwork and all of that stuff. That's definitely going to happen now, and so that's a thing that you definitely want to make sure that you're following up with your customers about.
Yeah, especially
Um,
on that at the time when it's kicking in around May 2nd, because that
yeah,
is there's going to be confusion. There's going to be some uncertainty as to what to exactly do. So it's going to slow things down then as well. So let your customers know for those orders specifically that this is being enacted, and there might be a little bit of slowdown. So in addition to the regular slowdown we're talking about here.
yeah. And then the next thing that you need to do is stay tuned in right here to the e-commerce hour, coming to you most every Friday, and so that you can know what happens next, so you can understand whether those de minimis thresholds have come off in Vietnam as well, or if Mexico, China, the EU, like they all get thrown under the bus under the same thing, right? Where you now like don't even have this option anymore. But regardless of what that answer is, we'll be right here to tell you all about it. That's what we want to do. One other thing that you can do, as we've reminded you several times when we talk about tariffs, is you can go find our landed cost calculator. This will be really, really important to those companies that are sourcing through China like that, using this de minimis threshold, because you will have new costs. And you want to be thoughtful of that so that you can either maintain your margins or understand what kind of impact your margin erosion is going to be based on different pricing points. If this is something that's really, really that you've already given a lot of thought to, or maybe that you've experienced for that one day in already, drop a comment. Tell us about your experience. Tell us about the things you're worried about as it comes to this. Maybe as a consumer or as an e-commerce provider. I'd be interested in both. I want to know all of those perspectives.
Or the fact you're not worried about it because you've already done all of your planning. We'd love to hear that as well.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah,
Yeah.
we saw this coming, and so we worked around it, right? Like, I'd love to hear what kind of strategies you employed, things that you considered along the way, and especially if it's stuff that we didn't talk about here today, we'd love to talk about those things in the future. Yeah, I think that's a pretty good summary, right? Let's go.
Yeah, for sure.
Any other de minimis thoughts, Jay? What's your have you talked? This is going to sound weird. Have you talked to your daughter about the release of the de minimis threshold on Chinese?
Yeah, we have not had that conversation yet. No. Yeah.
I would be really curious what number one, are people even aware that this is a thing that's going to happen and that it's going to be like a 30% increase in costs overnight? Like, do people even know? Because my guess, Jay, is that you and I are very well aware of this, but our poor tweens,
right? They have no clue.
No clue.
So you know what?
No clue.
That's a great question, a great conversation topic for Easter morning. I think I will bring that up. So, and then I know I'll get some side eye and.
I love it though.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I hope you do.
Yes.
I hope you do.
I will get back to everybody on that, although I won't do that next Friday.
No, not next Friday. So typically, you can catch us here on the e-commerce hour every Friday at 3 p.m. Central, 4 p.m. Eastern, but not next Friday because Jay's traveling. So we're skipping next week. We'll come back to you in 2 weeks to talk about. Well, actually, I guess that's right at May 2nd.
We'll talk about the implementation on May 2nd, exactly.
That's right.
Yes.
Or who knows? Yeah, I guess it will be that day. We'll see if it's still there.
Yes, exactly.
If the de minimis exception has come back into play, and who knows what else, because May 2nd may be just the most exciting day in tariff history. Who knows? We'll see what happens. But again, as we mentioned before, you know that you can find that news right here on the e-commerce hour. And Jay, what do you do Easter? Is Easter a thing? Do you have Easter plans?
We have plans. I mean, Easter's in just
So
another day to
just have to
me,
be,
but yeah.
just have to be
I mean,
on the day that
my
other people
wife
call Easter.
celebrates, so we have some friends coming over and got some youngins coming over, so we'll be hiding plastic eggs,
Yeah,
and they'll be looking for the candy and throwing everything else on the ground.
yeah,
So
that
it's
checks out. That checks out. My daughter's daycare center had a little Easter egg hunt yesterday.
yeah,
So we got the basket of eggs last night. Um,
nice.
we we told her you can open 3 eggs today, and we'll just do 3 for each day for a while, and hopefully we got one of this. We had one of the 3 was a donut egg, which is too funny to me. The egg game is like out of control now. I didn't
Yeah,
know about this. Not familiar with donut eggs, or one of these eggs like looks like what you can like a Jurassic Park dinosaur egg. Like I'm like, what is happening? We're gonna pop that one open, and a
yeah,
velociraptor is gonna come out or
right,
something,
yeah,
and I'm gonna be like, but but one of them had a little like squishy cow in it. One was like some stickers with the candy, but I'm
yeah,
hopeful for more squishy cows and less candy. That's not a At 3. We're not ready to give her too much candy.
yeah.
That'll be that'll be
Oh,
pretty intense.
the wall bouncing will be intense for sure.
Yeah, right. So
Yes.
we're gonna do our best to limit the exposure to wall bouncing as much as we can.
Yeah.
Um, we uh, we we do not have any plans this weekend either.
Yeah.
So she got the little egg hunt. Probably try to get together with my brother. Maybe not this weekend. It sounds like he's traveling, but
Yeah.
maybe another weekend to do to do some egg hunting, or something like that. I know my daughter really enjoys it. So, um, but
Yeah.
otherwise, it'll be a fun week. Jay and I are both traveling next week. So who knows what kind of news you'll hear from us? But what I do know is exactly what I told you already. On May 2nd, we'll be back right here,
Ready to
uh,
go.
3 p.m. Central, 4 p.m. Eastern, and ready to go about whatever topic is important to e-commerce at that time. And the way things are changing rapidly, that could be like anything. So who knows what it'll
It
be.
really can.
Wonderful. Well, thank you all for spending time with us this afternoon. We we appreciate you watching with us today, and we'll see you in 2 weeks. Thanks for watching.
See everybody. Happy Easter.
Bye.